Politico, 19th of March 2024, Europe must conclude its unsuccessful China policy. Europe has been repeatedly duped by Chinese deceit, which has been effective for an extended period. Most European governments have significantly shifted their stance on China in the past decade. Previously, they held misguided optimism regarding Beijing's economic allure. However, they have since developed widespread concern regarding Beijing's complex threats. The significant change in perspective has been prompted by heightened awareness of China's actualities, the increasing confidence displayed by its leader Xi Jinping, external pressure from the United States, and the alignment of Russia's invasion of Ukraine with the strengthening of the partnership between Russia and China. In the interim, European leaders and officials have intensified their endeavors to establish a unified front against China alongside the United States and other allies through forums like the G7. The adoption of a more cautious approach is commendable. In contrast, recent years have witnessed a disorganized and reactive approach to policymaking, as officials have executed a series of abrupt U-turns regarding Chinese students and investment. In addition, considering the magnitude of the worldwide dilemma posed by Xi Jinping and the Chinese Communist Party, European governments must go beyond a rudimentary approach of addressing threats from Beijing on a case-by-case basis. Conversely, a more profound examination of the ultimate goals of Europe's China policy, and the degree to which these goals are aligned with those of the United States and other allies, is imperative. For instance, the United States is primarily motivated by pursuing a competitive advantage over China for its benefit. However, due to the extended period since European governments have occupied superpower status, they do not perceive China as an existential menace to their worldwide standing. Furthermore, the November U.S. presidential election ought to concentrate minds. If former President Donald Trump is re-elected, European governments will presumably be compelled to adopt a foreign policy that is more autonomous from the United States, thereby protecting themselves from his highly transactional and temperamental approach. Furthermore, should incumbent President Joe Biden be re-elected, Europe will probably face increased pressure from his administration to enforce a more stringent China policy, which would be more consistent with the White House's trajectory. In collaboration with my peers at Chatham House and the Royal United Services Institute, I orchestrated a sequence of workshops for policymakers from Europe and the United States to stimulate discourse regarding the intersecting and divergent facets of transatlantic China policy. The outcomes of these workshops are outlined below. A consensus was reached during these deliberations regarding security objectives, with Europeans and Americans seeking to preserve the status quo in Asia, sustaining openness in the South China Sea, ensuring Taiwan's de facto independence, and bolstering deterrence against potential future Chinese aggression. However, notable disparities in emphasis emerged, as U.S. officials were notably more concerned regarding Beijing's menace towards Taiwan. Furthermore, it is worth noting that although European and American officials have agreed to discuss de-risking from China rather than decoupling economically, Washington's motivation is to maintain technological superiority. In contrast, Europe's primary aim is to decrease reliance. One participant at our London workshop stated that de-risking is a temporal and degree-dependent process. The U.S. desires an immediate de-risking. Numerous other EU member states concur with de-risking but are hesitant to act so swiftly or broadly. Furthermore, our conversations revealed that the pursuit of domestic industrial policy is inextricably linked to de-risking, which puts transatlantic partners in direct competition with one another in China. Last but not least, European officials expressed apprehension regarding U.S. unilateralism about the multilateral system despite their shared desire to counter China's progressively effective diplomacy in international institutions and the global South. The increasing likelihood that Trump will reclaim the White House further exacerbates these concerns. In contrast, several U.S. officials cautioned that their European counterparts were downplaying the danger posed by China and that their naive belief that multilateral cooperation could endure in an increasingly fragmented world was misplaced. A participant at our workshop in Washington remarked, "Global multilateral institutions will be arenas of contention between the United States and its allies and partners in opposition to China and other illiberal powers. In order for their cooperation to be effective rather than merely symbolic, European and American policymakers must openly discuss their differences regarding China, despite their increasingly pursued rhetorical unity in their public statements." Moreover, in light of the recent temporary stabilization of relations between China and the West, this is an opportune time for Europeans to reconsider the long-term objectives and means of attaining those objectives of their China policies. This will necessitate increased financial expenditures to enhance Europe's understanding of China among its business community, government, and the general populace. The scarcity of policy-relevant Chinese scholars in Europe poses a significant challenge to fostering a thoughtful dialogue. Europe must also pose difficult questions regarding the endgame it hopes to achieve with its China policy. What sort of global role are Europeans inclined to acknowledge China should it assume? Which sectors of the European economy are most susceptible to Chinese coercion, and who will bear the financial burden of reducing these vulnerabilities? Furthermore, what practical impact can the limited number of global militaries in Europe have on dissuading China's efforts to expand its influence beyond Asia? Upon disclosing our preliminary findings to a senior diplomat representing a non-European ally of the United States, they advised that disclosing these discrepancies among U.S. allies would be equivalent to assistance from Beijing. Conversely, transatlantic partners can only achieve practical cooperation with China, a challenge anticipated to span multiple decades, if not generations, by fostering a more comprehensive comprehension of their commonalities and divergence areas.